Room 306 was empty. The phone rang anyway. I've worked the graveyard shift at the Grandview Hotel for 3 years now, midnight to 8 in the morning, 5 nights a week. Most people can't handle it. The isolation gets to them, the silence. The wait time seems to stretch and compress in the hours between 2 and 5. When the world outside goes so quiet you can hear the buildings settling around you, but I got used to it. I actually preferred it. No demanding guests. No managers hovering. Just me, the lobby, and the hum of the ancient heating system that rattled through the walls like something breathing. The Grandview isn't what it used to be. Built in 1928, it still has some of that old elegance buried under layers of neglect. Crown moulding caked with decades of paint. Art Deco light fixtures that flicker when the wind picks up. The carpet in the lobby is burgundy, or was once. Now it's more of a faded rust color, worn thin in paths that trace the most common routes. From the door to the desk, from the desk to the elevator, from the elevator to the door. Most nights, only a handful of rooms are occupied. Traveling salespeople who book the cheapest option online. The occasional couple having an affair. People who need a place to sleep and don't ask questions. The 3rd floor has been mostly empty for months. Something about renovations that never seem to start. Room 306 had been vacant for 6 weeks when the phone calls started. It was a Tuesday. October 17th. I remember because I'd just updated the logbook and noted how quiet it was. Only for rooms occupied in the entire building, none on the 3rd floor. The phone rang at 2:47 a.m., not my cell phone, the desk phone. The landline system that connects to all the rooms. When a guest picks up their room phone and dials 0, it rings at the front desk. Each room has a specific ring pattern, and the small LED display shows which room is calling. The display read 306. I stared at it for a moment. The phone kept ringing. That harsh, metallic trill that sounds different from modern phones. Morin Sistai checked the computer. Room 306, vacant. Cleaned and ready. No reservation until the weekend. I picked up the receiver. Front desk. How can I help you? Silence. Not dead air. Something was there. I could feel it the way you feel someone standing behind you in an empty room. A presence. A quality to the silence that was different from a disconnected line. Hello? Is anyone there? Nothing. Just that weighted quiet. After 30 seconds, I heard a soft click and the line went dead. I put the phone down, told myself it was a malfunction. Old wiring in an old building. It happened sometimes. But I pulled up the maintenance logs anyway. Room 306 had been checked 2 weeks ago. Phone working properly, no issues reported. I tried to go back to my book, but I couldn't focus. The lobby felt different now. The shadows in the corners seemed darker. The elevator at the end of the hall reflected the dim light in a way that made it look like it was moving, even though I could see the floor indicator was stuck on L for lobby. At 3:34 a.m., the phone rang again. Room 306. This time I didn't hesitate. Relò, silenzio. That same heavy, breathing silence. I held the phone to my ear and listened. Really listened. There was something. So faint I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. A sound like fabric moving. Like someone shifting their weight. And underneath that, barely audible, something that might have been breathing. "If this is a prank, it's not funny," I said, trying to sound authoritative. "I can see this call is coming from an empty room." The line clicked off. I stood up from behind the desk. The lobby stretched out in front of me, ending at the elevator and the stairwell door beside it. To my left, a sitting area with furniture no one had sat in for years. To my right, a hallway leading to the conference rooms we never used anymore. Everything was still. Everything was quiet. I walked to the elevator and pressed the call button. The mechanism groaned to life somewhere above me. I watched the numbers descend. 5, 4, 3. The doors opened. The elevator was empty. The light inside was dimmer than the lobby, casting everything in a sickly yellow tint. I stepped inside and pressed 3. The ride up was slow. The elevator shuddered and creaked. Through the gaps in the door, I could see each floor sliding past. First floor hallway, dark. Second floor hallway, one light out at the far end. Then third. The doors opened onto silence. The third floor hallway stretched in both directions. The carpet up here was worse than downstairs, worn down to the backing in spots. The wallpaper, once an elegant pattern of vines and flowers, was peeling near the ceiling. For wall sconces provided the only light, spaced too far apart, leaving pools of shadow between them. Room 306 was to the right. I walked slowly, my footsteps muffled by the old carpet. Every few feet I passed a door. 301-303-1305 room 306 was the end of the hall, just before the emergency exit stairwell. I stood in front of the door for a long moment. No light showed under the gap at the bottom. No sounds came from inside. I pulled out my master key card and held it near the lock, then stopped. What was I expecting to find? I swiped the card. The lock clicked. I pushed the door open. The room was empty, completely, utterly empty. Two double beds with burgundy comforters pulled tight, a desk with a lamp and a notepad, a television mounted on the wall. The bathroom door was open, showing white tile and a running toilet that hadn't been fixed yet. The curtains were drawn. The phone sat on the nightstand between the beds. Beige plastic, curly cord, the same model in every room. It looked completely normal. I walked over and picked up the receiver, dial tone. I pressed 0. Down in the lobby, I knew the phone was ringing. I let it ring 5 times, then hung up. Everything was working properly. I checked the closet. Empty. I checked under the beds. Nothing but dust. I even checked the bathroom, pulling back the shower curtain. Nothing, just an empty room. I left, making sure the door locked behind me, and took the elevator back down. The lobby felt even emptier now. I checked the time. 4:02 a.m., the deadest part of the night, when even the city outside seemed to stop breathing. I tried to tell myself it was just faulty wiring. A short in the system making it seem like calls were coming from that room. But I couldn't shake the feeling I'd had while standing in that hallway. The sense that something was watching me from the shadows between the lights. The phone rang again at 4:51 a.m. Room 306. I stared at the display. My hand hovered over the receiver. Part of me didn't want to answer. But another part, maybe the part that had got comfortable decision, ne they took no, I picked up. This time there was something, not silence, a sound, low and indistinct, like a voice heard through water. I pressed the phone harder against my ear. "I can't hear you," I said. You need to speak up. The sound continued. It rose and fell in rhythm, almost like speech, but the words wouldn't resolve. It was frustrating. Like trying to remember something just out of reach. I'm sorry, I can't understand you. The quality changed. The underwater muffle became slightly clearer, and I realized with a chill that it was a voice. A human voice whispering, Dada, why didn't you? The words were so faint I wasn't sure I'd heard them correctly. What? What did you say? Why didn't you answer? Double quotes, my skin went cold. The voice was thin, strained, like someone speaking with great effort. Who is this? How did you get into that room? The line went dead. I sat there with the receiver in my hand, my heart hammering. This wasn't a malfunction. Someone had spoken. Someone was in that room, or had been in that room, or... I pulled up the security camera feeds on the computer. The Grandview system was ancient, barely functional, but we had cameras at each end of the third-floor hallway. I rewound to 4:51 a.m. The hallway was empty. The timestamp ticked forward. Las 4:51. Las 4:52. No one entered and walked the hallway at all. I sat back in my chair. My hands were shaking. I spent the rest of the shift searching through the reservation system, going back through the records. Room 306 had last been occupied September 8th. Guest name, Harold Pritchard. Checked in alone. Stayed one night. The checkout notes said housekeeping had found the room empty at the designated time. Nothing unusual, except... I dug deeper into the back records, the ones we kept for liability reasons, incident reports, maintenance requests, guest complaints. And there it was. Filed September 9th, marked confidential, visible only to management. Guest Harold Pritchard, room 306, found deceased by housekeeping staff at approximately 8:30 a.m. on September 8th. Cause of death, cardiac arrest during the night. Estimated time of death between 2 o'clock and 5 a.m. Next of kin notified. Body removed by county coroner. Room deep cleaned and returned to service. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. Someone had died in room 306 6 weeks ago. Died alone in the middle of the night, probably calling out for help that never came. I checked the phone logs. We didn't keep them long, but September's records were still in the system. On September 8th, at 2:47 a.m., room 306 had called the front desk. No answer logged. I felt sick. There had been a call. Someone had been working that night, Jerry. Probably. He'd covered my cushion and he'd missed it or ignored it. Or maybe the phone had rung in an empty lobby while he was in the bathroom. And Harold Pritchard had died, alone, unable to reach anyone. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop imagining someone lying in that bed in the dark, feeling their heart failing, reaching for the phone with shaking hands, dialing 0, listening to it ring and ring, no one coming. I left at 8 a.m. when my replacement arrived. I didn't mention the calls. I went home and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that empty room. That phone on the nightstand. I called in sick the next 2 nights. Told them I had the flu, but I couldn't stay away forever. The bills didn't stop. Life didn't stop. On Friday night, I came back. The lobby looked the same worn carpet, the same flickering lights, the same silence, but it felt different now, heavier, like the air pressure had changed. I tried to act normal. Went through my usual routine, logged in, checked the reservations. Made coffee in the little break room behind the desk. At 2:47 a.m. exactly, the phone rang. Roomhurried's première staré date, count rings 5, 6, 7, pick up. At 3:34 a.m. it rang again. I let it ring until it stopped. At 4:51 a.m. I was ready. When the phone rang, I grabbed it immediately. Hello? The voice was clearer now. Still whispered, still thin, but the words were distinct. Why didn't you answer? I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I'm so sorry. I wasn't here. It wasn't me. I called. I called and called. I know. I know you did. It hurt. It hurt so much. I'm sorry. Why didn't you answer? I wasn't. Why didn't you answer? The voice rose to a shriek that dissolved into static. The sound was so loud I yanked the phone away from my ear. Through the receiver, I could hear something else now, not words. A sound like wind, or water, or something rushing past at great speed. And then, clearly, cutting through everything, you're there now. The line went dead. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the desk, the receiver swinging on its cord. My whole body was trembling. You're there now. I looked at the computer screen, the security feeds. The empty hallway on the 3rd floor, the door to room 306 closed and undisturbed. I should have left, should have walked out right then. But I didn't. Maybe I needed to know. Maybe I needed to end it. Maybe I was already too far gone to make rational decisions. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway was the same. The same shadows, the same worn carpet. But as I walked toward room 306, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The sconces on the wall were flickering, not all of them. Just the ones nearest to 306. The door was closed, locked. I pulled out my master key card. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely swipe it. The lock clicked. I pushed the door open. The room was dark. I'd left the curtains drawn, and no light came from outside. I reached for the light switch beside the door. The overhead light flickered on. The room looked exactly as I'd left it, empty, clean, undisturbed, except for the phone. The receiver was off the hook. It lay on the bed, cord stretched taut. I could hear it from where I stood. The dialton loud sie hadn't it lie certain. I had checked everything, and the phone had been on its cradle. I walked over slowly. The carpet muffled my footsteps. The receiver lay on the burgundy comforter, the sprawl cord, making a shadow like première piquée détupée. The dial tone stopped. For a moment there was nothing, then breathing. Right in my ear, close, intimate, the breathing of someone lying in a bed in the dark, phone pressed to their face. You answered. The voice whispered. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. I waited. I called and called, and you weren't there. I'm here now. I managed to say yes, a pause. The breathing continued. In and out, labored, pained. It's too late now. But you're here. What do you want? I just wanted someone to know. Someone to hear me. I hear you. Do you? The voice sounded sad, distant. Or are you just another empty room? The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone for a long time. The silence in the room was absolute. Not even the hum of the heating system penetrated here. It was like standing in a vacuum. Finally, I put the receiver back on its cradle. I left the room, locked the door, took the elevator down. I finished my shift, went home, came back the next night. The calls continued. They still continue. Every night, at 2:47 a.m., at 3:34 a.m., at 4:51 a.m., the phone rings. Room 306. Sometimes I answer. Sometimes I don't. It doesn't seem to matter. The voice asks the same questions. Why didn't you answer? Why wasn't anyone there? Itursed mich spreads. Sometimes it whispers things I can't quite make out. I've thought about quitting, finding another job, but I wonder if it would make any difference. If the calls would stop, or if they'd just ring into an empty lobby forever. The way they rang into an empty room 6 weeks ago when Harold Pritchard needed help and no one came. Management doesn't know. The system doesn't log internal calls that aren't answered at the desk. To everyone else, room 306 is just another vacant room in an old hotel. They've started booking it again. Guests stay there now. They never complain about the phone. Maybe it only rings for me. Last week, I pulled Harold Pritchard's full file. There was a photo from his driver's license copied for the registration. He was 73, thin grey hair, tired eyes. He looked like someone who'd been alone for a long time. The file also included his emergency contact, a daughter in Milwaukee. I wonder if she knows her father died calling for help in a hotel room in a city where he didn't know anyone. I wonder if she'd want to know. I think about calling her sometimes, but what would I say? Your father calls me every night. He wants to know why no one answered. I don't have an answer for her. I don't have an answer for him. Tonight, when the phone rings at 2:47 a.m., I'll probably answer. I usually do now. It seems like the least I can do. Sit here in the empty lobby and listen to a voice that shouldn't exist anymore, asking questions that don't have answers. The calls never change, never get better or worse, never resolve into anything meaningful. They just continue, night after night, a loop of pain and confusion and need that wasn't met when it mattered. Room 306 is empty right now. I checked an hour ago. Clean sheets, fresh towels, phone on the cradle, but in 40 minutes it will ring. And I'll be here. I'm always here now. Even on my nights off, I wonder if the phone is ringing, if someone else is picking up, if they hear what I hear, if they understand what it means to be on the other end of a call that came too late. The thing about the graveyard shift is that you get used to being alone. You get used to the silence. You get used to the way time moves differently in the empty hours. But you never get used to knowing that someone died waiting for you to pick up the phone. You never get used to the sound of their voice asking why. In 35 minutes, room 306 will call the front desk. I'll answer. I always answer now. But I know, with a certainty that sits in my chest like ice, that it will never be enough. Some calls can't be returned. Some needs can't be met after the moment has passed. And some silences, once they've fallen, can never be broken. The phone is silent now. The lobby is quiet. The clock on the wall ticks forward, second by second, toward 2:47 a.m. I wait. I'm still waiting.